putting what we're doing today in context, basically, of what we've been doing in the past with BIM4Housing, the past guidance, and where we're heading in the future. Now, George can't make it, so we've got a recording. But I'm wondering, actually, whether everybody's already heard that, in which case I won't bother with it. Is there anybody on the call that hasn't been on one of these roundtables this time? Is everybody already been? You've been on, Mo, haven't you? I know Colin's been on.
Yeah. And Richard, I've joined this one because I wanted a break from cavity barriers and AOVs, basically. So I just thought I'd see what was going on in this one.
Well, I hope there's somebody on the call that knows what they're doing, because I don't. Hilton, have you done a call before? You're on mute, Hilton.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can now, yeah. Have you been on one of these sessions before?
Yes, I have. I think
you have, right? So you've heard the introduction. David, how about you?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I did the fire doors.
Right. Okay. So that being the case, I suggest we skip George's introduction, and just dive straight into it. Okay, do you want to put up the? There we go. So what are the component part elements of a dry or wet riser system? Have a quick flick through that and see if there's anything that stands out as missing or amendable. Nothing? Okay, let's scroll down just to dependencies. Actually, let me just stop a minute. Are there people on the call who are actually involved directly with wet dry risers? Is there anyone?
Yeah.
Anybody?
I am.
Sorry?
I am, Richard.
Right.
with basically location and specification on drawings, etc. through the practice.
Because there's a question that George wanted me to ask, and that is, firstly, do dry and wet risers have pumps?
No, it's just wet risers.
Just wet risers.
Yeah. So that
right. That's the first question. Secondly, how important is it in terms of the available hose length? As in, if there was a fire on the 13th floor, potentially they might have to get water from the 10th floor and this sort of thing. How does that get managed?
Well, my understanding is that's where the regs come into play. So if you have your 50 meters, etc., all the rest of it, that is your wet riser provision once you're above 50 meters. So anything up to 50 meters can be dry riser, and then the pumping appliance is basically your fire brigade, fire and rescue service pumping appliance. And so yeah, that's basically that's the guidance we work to under ADB.
Got it. Okay, mate, thank you. Right, so what are we looking at next, Jess? Right, are there any dependencies for dry wet risers? Right, where are you going? On other systems? Are they dependent on anything else?
Not dry risers.
But wet risers are?
Yeah, wet risers need water supplies, their own pumps.
Right, yeah. Water supply, we've got that. Anything else that needs to go in there?
Do you need to cover anything on falling mains rather than just rising mains?
Sorry?
Do you need to cover anything on falling mains instead of rising mains?
Never used a falling main. Never seen one specified. Not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Um,
not. It's not something I've come across.
Okay.
I have used them. So I'm an ex-operational fire officer, if you like. So I have used them, but they tend to be in more warehousey scenarios, underground car parks and things like that. They're not generally in a domestic setting.
Right. Okay.
They look identical. The inlet is identical. It's just the pipe goes down, not up.
Right.
So it would run off either system, like the wet riser, dry riser. It's just exactly the same. It's just the pipe front that goes down rather than vertically up the building.
Okay. Right, let's move down then. What risks does a dry or wet riser system mitigate? What risks do they mitigate? Have a look at that and see if there's anything else we need to add in there. Anything? Got it covered.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay. Scroll down to,
realistically, they don't.
sorry?
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they don't do any of those really. They're just for transporting water. So if you didn't have a dry riser in a building over 18 meters, the fire brigade would just run a hose through the center of the stairwell or up the side of the building. It's so that they are the end point. Like a dry riser is just speed of fire attack, if you like. It's
Right.
the speed that the fire brigade can get into a flat. If you have to run hose up 10 stories, obviously you can imagine how time consuming, how energy consuming, and how
Sure.
people intensive that is. So they're just quite frankly, they're just 100 mil pipe that runs either internally or externally that transports water from the ground floor to whatever floor you need it on. So
Yeah.
it's actually speed of attack, which will then obviously hamper all of those. So what they
Yeah,
really do
pause
is
to-
speed up the fire services.
Yeah, Paul's just actually put that into the chat, I think. Just do you want to copy that over? Right, that's what it does, not what the risk it mitigates, but that's we can understand that for now, and we'll rewrite that. Anything else? I'm not sure if you're joking, Paul.
No, I'm not joking really. Dry risers.
Fair enough.
No, because it
Fair
saves having to
enough.
drag heavy hose up buildings, like the other gentleman was saying earlier. It reduces having to take massive, fully charged hoses up buildings.
Should you not take out all of those earlier points because they're all really just risk of fire rather than something that, you know, a dryer or a riser is going to mitigate the risk of fire spread or reduce the fire spread. All of those early bullet points are just risks of fire, whereas the two that we've just added are things that the risers actually directly mitigate.
Yeah, I'm going to have to talk. I'm going to raise that offline. I couldn't really make that judgment. So yeah, I absolutely understand where you're coming from. Okay, other than obviously potentially deleting the rest of the list, is there anything else that can be added on there? Okay, let's skim down. Cheers. Right. To what risk the dry wet risers themselves susceptible? What stops them functioning?
Potentially one to add, it's got wrongly placed outlets or inlets, but what we come across quite often is that there isn't the firefighting appliance accessibility allowed for, so it's not actually directly linked to the dry wet riser itself, but there's no point in having one there if you can't get your firefighting appliance within.
Right. Okay. Could you write that in the chat for me so can copy it over? Anybody? Anything else?
I'm a little bit puzzled about the undersized drainage system for drain down valves.
Sorry, where's that?
The fourth one down.
Oh yeah, I got it. Undersized drainage systems for drain downs.
So
It floods the plant room.
like wet risers, if you're going to drain down a wet riser, you're going to have to turn off the water supply to the wet riser in the first place, and you will drain it down to a place using a hose outside. So you shouldn't flood the plant room because that would be. But I can see it as a risk. But dry riser, the dry riser drain down valve is in the inlet delivery, which is on the outside of the building. So you can either connect it to a hose. Very rarely that I would ever see that get done, or you just open up the drain valve and it will drain itself and empty itself out, which is good practice after use because it stops a pipe from reduces the risk of corrosion. So it's a little
right.
bit.
So that's relevant for that. That's a risk for wet risers, but not dry risers.
Well,
is that what we're saying?
You would drain down a wet riser, and if you drain down a wet riser, you would drain it down to a point which is outside the building. I just think it goes back to a point I said earlier about it being poorly installed. So if a dry riser inlet should be within a certain distance of the access point for the fire appliance. If you've installed it in a place where you can't reach it, what's the point of it in the first place? But
yeah,
so
absolutely, yeah.
It goes back to the design stage, I think, maybe not necessarily when it's in use stage. So I might be being a bit pedantic or adding information that's not really required.
Well, no, but right. So potentially it is a problem for wet risers, but not potentially a problem for dry risers.
It shouldn't be if it's been installed.
It shouldn't be. None of the but none of these things should be. The point is,
no, that's what I'm saying. Okay.
But not for dry risers.
Yeah, it shouldn't be for dry risers because the drainage valve for a dry riser is outside. The problem comes when after you've used it, that you don't disconnect your hoses from the outlet when they're full of water because it will allow water into the building. So that's the problem. It's about, it's not a problem for the actual dry riser itself.
The actual dry riser itself, no. Yeah, I think this is about the actual the issues for the actual piece of kit, really. So just on that fourth one, undersized drainage systems, just put in brackets at the end in green, wet risers only, just so when we go through this, it will remind me. Okay, anything else? Okay, scroll down, Jess. Right. What information is needed about riser systems to ensure that they perform as required? Have we got headings under this, Jis, or is it all at the top? Right, no, that's all we've got. So what information do we need to know? Anybody got any comments on that or something to add in?
Has this been copied from sprinklers?
I'm sorry?
Has it been copied from sprinklers?
No, not that I'm aware of.
I just noticed it says so the room does not flood. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's in the top, the upper one as well. The one we've just covered. Is that not relevant?
To be honest with you, my experience with wet risers was pretty slim. I only saw a couple of buildings with them in.
Sorry, I missed the end of that. You only saw a couple of buildings?
Yeah, I only ever dealt with a couple of buildings that installed wet risers, so I don't have a great deal of experience with them.
Okay, anybody else? About the drop drainage capacity. And nothing to add? Ian?
My recent experience on sprinkler systems has been that in a number of developments, I think 3 in the last 3 years, the sprinkler system water has been combined with the cold water storage for the building.
Ian, we're not doing
Yeah.
sprinklers, we're doing dry wet risers.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay, don't worry.
I'm on the wrong meeting today.
Don't worry. Well, this is the last one, so you must have missed it.
I must have. Yeah, I'll make that point some other time.
Yeah. Very good, very good. Okay, anybody else? Right, let's scroll down to question 3 then. Well, we're whizzing through this. Right, what tasks are required to ensure what must be done to ensure dry wet risers are installed, commissioned, inspected, and maintained properly? Right, scroll down and we'll look at installed and commissioned. There we go. Look. Anything in terms of installation? Nothing? So basically, what we're saying is that this is a very simple piece of kit that there's not really a great deal of complex digging and delving to be done about it. Is that kind of where the consensus? Mo?
From my point.
The Fire Safety England regulations have introduced a requirement that they get a visual inspection every month now if they're in buildings over 18 meters.
Oh, right, okay.
So yeah, in addition to any requirements for the British standard, the Fire Safety England regulations apply to the inspection for dry risers and wet risers, any firefighting equipment actually in buildings.
So that would come into maintenance, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Would it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just have a look at commissioned. Anything that stands out there? Scroll down a bit, Jess. Anything that should be gone in there? No comments?
Nope.
Well, let's scroll down to inspection then, and we can put Mo's point in there. Just check it's not in there already. All right, scroll down just to the end of those. Is that it? What's that? Oh, that's just an example from SFG 20. Have we got more afterwards? Scroll down, Jess. Yeah, this is all from the legislation. Okay, go back to our bullet points. Right, scroll up. Right, inspection and maintenance. Right. So, Mo, Fire Safety England have mandated, right, put a point there, Jess. Fire Safety England
I think that was
have
Paul.
mandated. Tell me again, Mo.
It was someone else who made that comment, Richard. I think it was Paul.
Oh, sorry. I beg your pardon. Paul.
Yeah, sorry. I'll write it into the chat box for you. You get the.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. That's fantastic. Okay. When Paul's written that, put that under inspections. Yeah, put Paul's comment when he's done it, just where in place of that bit I said. Put it there. Okay, let's scroll down to question 4. So did somebody say this was Fire Safety England, what we're looking at now? Or did I misunderstand?
The Fire Safety England regulations have just said that there needs to, in buildings over 18 meters, there needs to be a monthly visual inspection. It's kind of like a non-technical inspection of all
Right. Yeah.
firefighting equipment, and they specifically put risers in there, but it's not hugely clear exactly what should be checked. And I think there's one, I think where the mouse is now, there was a paragraph somewhere which detailed some visual inspections, and I think that might be quite helpful to have in there.
Okay, that's fine. Right. So this that we're actually looking at on screen now, this is from Fire Safety England, is it, that we're looking at?
Don't think so. I don't think that's from Fire Safety England. I don't know where that screenshot's from. That looks like some kind of a British standard, maybe.
Okay. Right. Excellent. Right, let's have a look at question 4, which is about competency and training. What level of competency and training needs to be in place? Let's scroll down. Is that it, Jess? Yeah. So seems like not very much. Would that be right? Nothing to add in there. Hold on a minute, my camera's playing up. Nothing? Okay, let's scroll down to question 5. Right, how are changes from one product to another recorded? We've got some generic stuff under that. So what about what changes would be made? And how would they be recorded? I mean, if there was a new pump, would that need to fulfill certain requirements? Would it need to presumably have the same sort of performance as what it was replacing? How would that be recorded? Anybody?
Pumps normally just have an amount of head and a volume, like a litres per minute. So I think you'd end up getting quite technical if you went into that stuff. And then pumps tend to have starters, and and then you might have backup generators. So I think you'd end up going into an infinite level of detail if you looked at all that stuff, I guess.
Well, if they're dependencies, system dependencies, then it's relevant, isn't it? I mean, we've got that at the top in terms of dependencies, but they're not directly this asset, are they? So yeah, I memean, anything we've got written there more than covers it. It's I think we're using the same methodology for all of these asset types, and obviously some are very much more complex than others. and it's very difficult, very easy to over-egg the pudding on something and make it more complex than it needs to be, which could be the case in point with those bullet points earlier on in question 1 that certainly people in this meeting seem to think totally superfluous. Okay. Well, we've gone through the document. Normally it's a battle to get it done in time, but we've gone through it very quickly. And I don't really think we've missed anything out. I just think that it's a relatively straightforward asset type that we're talking about.
Richard, I had a couple of comments that have sort of been mentioned during this chat anyway. If we go up, not linked to the questions, but if we go to, if just can go to the front of the document, and I think bear with me 2 seconds. It is where it says what is a dry and wet riser.
Yeah.
I don't, if you can go there, it notes most buildings have a wet riser. Now that isn't the case in my experience. Most buildings will have a dry riser. It is just wet risers will be for buildings typically over 50 meters, or if there's any other special requirement. But I'm welcome to other suggestions in the room if that is the case that would normally be seen. But yeah, typically it would be a dry riser that I'd expect to see. Only the taller buildings 50 plus having a wet riser.
Right, so that sentence would read, most buildings have a dry riser or a what? Not a wet standpipe, would it?
No, you would just have to separate that out as a sentence on its own, and then if it's a wet riser, where a wet riser system is applicable, or something like that, the pipes are kept full of water, you'd then roll into the next paragraph.
Right, got it.
I think for me, it was just a little bit confusing reading this document because you've got a dry riser in bold and then you've got wet risers below, but within the dry riser paragraphs, you're containing information about wet risers.
Right, okay.
So it's whether or not you just wanted to move that, just shift that whole paragraph into the next bold point, and then it reads along the subject matter. And then the only other one, there was a couple, was dry risers, where it notes dry risers are used when the water pressure of a building wouldn't be enough for fire suppression. Typically, we just work to dry risers are required when the building's 18 meters or plus, and that covers that. And also when you can't get a firefighting appliance within 45 meters of hose length distance.
Yeah.
So, which is often missed within design. Again, sorry, I'm focused on sort of the layout architectural side of it, but reading this, that isn't apparent, and that is something that gets missed. That if you're not within 45 meters, so you could have a 2-story blocked, 3-story block of flats, nowhere near the 18-meter mark, but because of the length of the block of flats, the hose length is more than 45, and then that would need a dry riser.
Okay, just mark that whole paragraph green, and we'll pick up what you said, Mo, from the high point stop from the recording, because that's quite important. I have to say, we didn't obviously write this. It will be one of the guys from the earlier meetings who's written this for us, because we wouldn't have this level of expertise, obviously. But it's good to have it all checked through.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate, I think there's a lot of important comments there. I missed the beginning of this meeting, so apologies for that. So I missed that bit. I would definitely have raised issues over the wording. I think it needs to be really clear and probably less complex. It's straightforward. The dry risers are only required in buildings over a certain height, or as has been pointed out, if you can't get within a certain distance, 45 meters of a hose to any part of a building. That's a newer requirement as well, so you wouldn't necessarily install that. But I think it's really important to get the wording.
It absolutely right. Is. Oh no, of course it is. I mean, to be honest, most of the descriptions of the assets are very short. This one seems to be very long for some reason.
And the other thing that I find a little bit, you know, why we make it more confusing, there are some quite straightforward descriptions of what a dry riser is and where they're required within the actual approved documents and some other guidance. So you could just
lift that.
That's what I think, because there are, you know, are we getting into specifying details? When we start specifying it, we've got to be careful, because there's always an exception. So it might be that you say refer to the guidance.
Yeah, we don't want to get into that. We're just a very, it's just supposed to be a very basic few very basic few lines saying what it is, not to get into a load of
I've dropped some bits in the chat there, Richard, that links ADB certainly for what I'd be using. And also the last one on here, which I think is quite important, is that BS 9990 provides guidance that the horizontal pipe run from your dry riser inlet to the stair outlet can't be more than 18 meters. And again, that's one that gets missed loads. You'll find that they're sort of, you know, can be 20, 23, 24 meters, and then it has to become a justification. And I don't think we should be going that route. We should be sticking to what, you know, what it is. So that.
The other thing
thank you.
The other thing to note is that in new buildings over 50 meters, it's requirement to be a wet riser, but you may find older buildings applied a different standard. So I think it was over 60 meters. So you know, you may go to a building that's over 50 meters, but under 60 meters that may not have a wet riser. You know, these are just little. This is what I'm saying: exceptions and discrepancies.
Yeah.
There was also something in a text, just sticking to sort of the language being used, mentioning a dry riser in relation to sprinkler provision, and for me that was confusing. Again, it's not. I wouldn't use the dry riser terminology for sprinkler provision, although it might be within a sprinkler system, but for me it's clear cut within the approved document and the British standards, you know, that the wet riser, dry riser are fire mains only.
Yeah. Do you know where that was?
It was roughly around the same place that we were looking. Bear with me 2 seconds.
Says it there. You've just gone past it. So depending on regional nomenclature, the term dry riser.
Oh right. Just highlight that in green, Jess. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that whole section I'm gonna condense down to this and make it very, very basic. So a lot of this we're going to be taking this out. I think it goes into much more detail than's necessary.
It sounds like it was generated by AI, to be fair, but there you go.
No, it wasn't. It was. It will be one of the guys from the meeting 18 months ago.
Yeah, before AI, really, for sure.
Sorry.
For the advent.
I mean, maybe that's where he got it from. I don't know, but it's yeah. I mean, that obviously I didn't write that, but
bit of sloping shoulders there, I think. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's been very interesting, these meetings, because you get like 6 or 7 people in a meeting who really know their stuff, and you kind of think that you're going to get to some sort of equilibrium on an issue, but no. So often, there's like 2 or 3 in one very definite about their belief in one thing, and maybe 3 or 4 in another group. It absolutely is as clear as they believing that they're correct as well. And it just shows that things aren't clear cut, are they? They really aren't. Okay, so we've gone through question about anybody else got anything on the preamble text at the beginning, or anything really? Any comments? Anything at all you want to raise? Okay, well, that was a very quick meeting, wasn't it? So everybody can have a long lunch now, can't they? We've all got lots of spare time. Well, thank you very much for coming and helping us with this. Obviously, there's amount of work to be done on this one. A lot of that will be actually excising, I think, non-essential description. Once it's done, we'll get that over to you all. You'll get a video link to the video of the meeting and a high points document of what was actually discussed. And then we'll hopefully come to an agreement on the contents. And after that, well, we've got, this is the last one of 12. It's been a bit of a marathon, actually. It's quite, I know it's a damp, feels a damp squid ending quickly on the last one, or actually feels really good to get away quickly. So we'll get this out to you when it's done. Hopefully see you. We're now, normal service resumes for the moment anyway. We'll be focusing on the work streams, the existing work streams and working groups. There's one thing I wanted to, George wanted to raise. We're setting up 3 groups. It will be a session, about an hour and a half session. One on data, as in if you're interested in the actual information. Another on process, if you're interested in the processing of that information. And another on application, the application of the data. So if anybody's got any interest in joining one or more of those 3 sessions, put your name in the chat. And that will happen over the next probably month or so. We'll get back to you on that.
If you could just log my interest in the process one, Richard.
Sorry?
If you could just log my interest in the process one. For some reason,
Absolutely.
I have to log in as a guest nowadays since Teams did some
and it wouldn't let
changes.
you chat.
It doesn't let me chat, and I can't see the chat either.
Oh, what a nightmare. Right, Jess, can you make a note of Ian for process?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent. Anybody else, if you put your name in the chat, we'll pick it up and you'll hear from us shortly. Okay then, well, thank you again, and see you all soon, I hope, and have a good afternoon.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.